Paleo baking can be so frustrating at times and harder than normal baking. You have all these weird flours you have to deal with, and you have to make sure that you're using eggs either for binding or for rising, and you have to figure all of that out on your own. Well, I'm here to tell you today that this pie crust recipe is the exception to the paleo baking rule. It is the easiest paleo recipe I've ever created, that I've ever made, and it's easier than your normal pie crust recipe, which requires lots of rolling out of dough and chilling dough and making sure the pastry is just perfect. And the worst part is pastries crack a lot. This is really, really simple. It's a stir and a press in pie crust. You're going to love it as much as I do, I promise. And not only that, it's super fast. 5 minutes, count. Let's do it. Take a small medium mixing bowl. You'll also need a fork for this recipe, a pie crust pan, a sifter, and also the ingredients listed below. Now, sifters aren't always required, but I love getting the fine texture of the almond flour when I use it. So I'm going to pour 1.25 cups of almond flour into this sifter, and then I'm going to go ahead and sift it, make sure there aren't any clumps. This is a bit of an old-fashioned sifter, but I love it, and I love using it in my recipes. Now that you're done sifting your almond flour, I want you to go ahead and add in 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and then we're just going to stir that in with a fork. Just mix it in really fast. Okay, next you're going to take 1 tablespoon of coconut oil, and we're going to cut that in to the dough. And you can cut it in just by pressing it into the almond flour again and again and again and again until you start to see nice clumps forming with that oil at the center. At this point, I like to actually get my hands messy and make sure that that oil is completely mixed in with all of the almond flour. All right, now we're going to add the egg. Just 1 egg. Go ahead and whisk it before you put it in. And we'll stir that in as well. And again, I'm going to use my hands to make sure that this crust turns out exactly the way I want it to. Just going to mix it until it sticks together and there's no pieces that are falling off anymore. To have a nice ball of dough right there. Take just a dab of coconut oil. I'm using just what was in the leftovers from that tablespoon. And then go ahead and grease your pie crust. Even though there's oil in this almond flour pie crust, you'll want to make sure that it's not going to stick to the pan. All right, let's grab this ball of dough, and then we're just going to press it in to the pie crust pan. Now this is a 9-inch pan, so anything bigger than this, you might want to double or maybe half the recipe. Okay. I like to use the palm of my hand like this to spread that dough around and to make sure that I'm getting a good crust on the sides, especially on the sides. So I'm moving that dough from the middle to the outside edges very quickly, just using my fingers. Once I've got enough of the dough on the outside edge, I'm just going to take my fingers around like this to pull it up even more. If you make holes, no big deal. We'll come back and patch those later. I just want to make sure that my crust edges are good to go. Okay, let's patch up some of those holes. You may notice that some areas of the pie are thinner than others, or maybe if you're using a larger pan, it's thinner all the way around than what you're seeing right here. That's okay, that's just fine. There's no need to worry about it because this crust, that egg, will bind everything together and bake it through and you won't have any holes in it at all. I'll just make this look a little bit better along the edges. Now I like to go around and flatten all the edges of my pie crust just like that. Now you can go ahead and bake this in the oven as is, but I wanted to show you a little technique today on how to crimp the edges of the crust with your fingers to make it look just a little bit more pretty. What I do is I go ahead, and this pie pan is great because it's got that edging already to give you as a guide. Where it goes up, I'm going to pinch that area like this, not all the way, just press my fingers into it. And then I'm also going to push my finger up to get that nice crimped edge. You see what that did? So let me just do it on another one here for you. Okay, another really nice crimped edge there. Now some of these might not turn out as great. I might need to push up a little bit more dough, but that's okay. Just press those edges and push up. All right, there you go. That is done. Stick it in the oven at 350 for 8 to 10 minutes or until the crust is starting to harden. You don't really want to get a golden edge on this if you are baking first. So let's say you wanted to make a chocolate cream pie, you want to pre-bake the crust and then put the filling in and chill it. However, if you're making a pumpkin pie, then you're just going to go ahead and fill this uncooked crust, this raw crust, with the pumpkin filling and then place it in the oven and cook it according to the directions for the pumpkin pie. I'm going to go ahead and use this one for my cream pie, so I'm going to stick it in the oven right now. Here's the finished pie crust. See how it's just lightly golden right here at the top of that edging. And this actually ended up being a pretty thick crust. I don't see any holes in it at all. And it is ready to be cooled so that I can put in whatever cold filling I desire. Thanks for joining me as I showed you how to make this perfect paleo pie crust recipe. Super easy, under 5 minutes. Once you've got it down, you can pop these out like nobody's business. So I hope you enjoy your day and happy baking.